Americans are hooked on Zyn.
Every dude, every bro I know Zins.
I need my fix. Where are they? Where?
Cigarette smoking has plummeted in the US, but the stock price of one of the biggest cigarette companies in the world, Philip Morris International, hit an all-time high in 2024. And it's partly due to this: Zyn, an oral nicotine pouch. Authorized by the FDA on January 16, 2025, it marks the first time regulators have authorized the sale of nicotine pouches.
Their goal is by 2030, 2/3 of their revenue should be smoke-free, and ultimately they'd love it to be 100%. The beauty of this transformation is that they're actually generating faster top line and faster profitability, given the pivot to these businesses.
It's an incredibly attractive business. It's subscriptions, right? Where we can get people to pay every month. Nicotine is almost like creating that subscription, right?
Zyn doesn't contain any tobacco and is designed so that you don't have to spit anything out while using it. The pouches are meant to be tucked between your cheek and gums on the upper or lower deck of your mouth, allowing the nicotine to be absorbed into your bloodstream.
So you just kind of tuck it up there. It's gonna take a minute and then we'll be in flavor country.
It's become somewhat of a social media sensation and the subject of many jokes online.
Honey, who was the biggest pop star in the 1980s?
Prince?
Nope, Michael Jack, Zyn.
Now it's kicked in. I feel like I've got an atomic fireball in my mouth. Those cinnamon candies.
So how did Zyn take off in the US? And is it here to stay?
You just kind of like end up going from one pouch to another pouch to another pouch. There is definitely a risk of that.
Have you felt yourself falling into that a little bit?
No, for sure, dude. Sometimes, yeah.
Take a look at Zyn shipment volumes over the past couple of years. While the company has not broken out Zyn revenue, one estimate places Zyn sales at $1.3 billion in 2023. Zyn is part of an effort by longtime cigarette manufacturer Philip Morris International to pivot its portfolio to smoke-free products.
To understand the story of Zyn, you have to understand Philip Morris. You know, the biggest tobacco company in the world.
It used to be a part of Altria Group until it was broken off in 2008. Except Altria Group kept the domestic faction of the brand, Philip Morris USA, which is responsible for many of the cigarettes sold in the US today. Philip Morris International was selling its products to the rest of the world. Well, at least that was the case until recently. Zyn has been on the US market since 2014, under parent company Swedish Match, which was acquired by Philip Morris International in a $16 billion deal in 2022. That was a strategic move given US nicotine pouch sales increased sharply from 2019 to 2022.
The acquisition of Swedish Match helped move Philip Morris one step closer to its goal of a transition toward a smoke-free future. Today, Zyn controls more than 70% of the US nicotine pouch market.
Philip Morris earns 6 times the amount on Zyn than it does on its international cigarette business. So again, it's in their best interest for many reasons to pivot not only their existing consumers to these products, but certainly take incremental share as well, because it is driving not only faster growth, but certainly faster profitability.
In 2022, the year that Swedish Match was acquired, about 240 million cans of Zyn were shipped in the US. In 2024, shipments are estimated to have more than doubled that amount.
Zyn is Philip Morris, right? So it's one of the biggest marketing companies in the world. The product is always going to get the right shelf space. And so it's multiple things happening. The backlash against vaping, the kids that were addicted to nicotine, Philip Morris with some great marketing. It all came together nicely.
Demand has been so strong that in the summer of 2024, Zyn had a supply shortage.
I just went to 4 different stores in my area. Not a single tin of 6 milli gum pillies available.
What we saw during that period of time is they might have lost a little share when Zyn was out of stock for consumers, but the loyalty of these, consumers to Zyn has been fascinating, because then they simply just would forego, or they'd wait to, till Zyn became back in stock before they purchased. So that kind of highlighted for us how strong that brand is and the competitive advantage that they have.
This is a song about running out of Zyns. They're out of Zyns again. When a green 3 milligram, 6 is...
In July and August of 2024, Philip Morris International announced it would invest over $800 million on expanding production of Zyn in the US.
Their capacity is going to expand dramatically. So I think the view is, or there's an understanding that they're going to be able to fill that demand and more in the next year or two, and that growth should only accelerate.
Long cut tobacco, it was a lot easier for me to get off of that because you can tell yourself, like, you know, this is really bad for you. You can get cancer. With this, it's sort of like, no, there's no tobacco in it. It's not really carcinogenic in the same way as far as we know.
For much of the past decade, Philip Morris was viewed as a dividend play for investors. Its reinvigoration into American culture has turned it into a growth stock once again.
I've had investors reach out to me that hadn't looked at these stocks before because they can't keep ignoring the growth that they're seeing on one of the staple stock, especially if that's the area of investments that they are making is staples. There's not a lot of growth of what I described from all the other names.
Fandom is something that is actively managed. And so Philip Morris, if you think about what their marketing problem is, in the background, you can say it's the distribution, getting it on the shelves, but one of their goals has got to be to keep the image cool, to keep the idea of being a Zyn person something that people want to, again, I'll use a word that's going to sound strange, something that people want to aspire to, right? That I want to be one of the Zyn kids when I get to high school. It's an interesting marketing challenge, right?
Although usage rates for nicotine pouches are lower than e-cigarettes, Zyn is growing in popularity with students. It has become a point of contention amongst lawmakers in D.C.
Pouch packed with problems. High levels of nicotine. So today, I'm delivering a warning to parents.
But the comment caused backlash from some Republicans, including Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, who called for a, quote, Zynsurrection on X. Zyn has become especially popular with conservative men.
I use it, every second I'm awake and in bed.
They're not gendered products, so it's a little bit confusing. But then at the same time, we still see that there's a disproportionate number of men that are using them.
I know that it's for guys. It's actually embarrassing. But I'll tell you one thing, they're delicious.
Become this almost symbol of masculinity.
Zyn?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's funny. I feel like a lot of the guys that I knew that chewed tobacco, I don't think they'd think that about this.
Zyn's popularity amongst men is especially prevalent on social media. Hashtag Zyn has been tagged in over 72,000 videos on TikTok and has exploded in popularity as an internet search term over the past 2 years. The company told CNBC that it doesn't use social media influencers and refuses requests for such partnerships. Its product websites are strictly age-gated, and its advertising features only individuals 35 or older.
Which is your favorite?
Ryan, it really depends on the kind of mood I'm in. Sometimes you're feeling citrus and sometimes you're feeling cinnamon.
Unlike its combustible predecessors and chewing tobacco, Zyn can be done almost anywhere at any time.
They're very discreet. And in the interviews we did with adults recently, that was one of the main things that people brought up. They were using them for a lot at work and a lot for concentration and improved performance. But they loved that they were discreet and they could just have a nicotine boost throughout the day, but like no one is ever going to know.
It's like, I'm not displaying the badge publicly. I'm displaying the badge on social media. So I'm identifying with this Zyn subculture via TikTok rather than, tapping out a cigarette. So social media has really enabled it, but yeah, the discreetness is a public health disaster.
On January 16, 2025, the FDA authorized the marketing of 20 Zyn products. It's the first time the agency authorized nicotine pouches. And although the FDA determined Zyn contains fewer harmful ingredients than cigarettes, the pouches still contain a number of other chemicals besides just nicotine. One study found small amounts of formaldehyde, which is poisonous. In its application to the FDA, the company, quote, provided evidence from a study showing that a substantial proportion of adults who use cigarette and/or smokeless tobacco products completely switched to the newly authorized nicotine pouch products. However, Zyn has not been authorized as a smoking cessation product. It has also not been designated as a modified risk tobacco product. meaning it cannot be advertised as safer than smoking. That is a separate application, and the company told us it has already filed it with the FDA.
If there's something like this out on the market, it's harder to justify risking the hazard of using tobacco.
There presumably would be a reduced risk because you're not having any of the known, negative effects or carcinogenic effects that you get with traditional tobacco. Doesn't mean that they're risk-free.
As consumers have become more aware of the harmful effects of tobacco, the companies are finding ways to pivot to alternatives. Zyn is Philip Morris's answer.
There's this continuum. So you have things like cigarettes on the really bad side, and then you kind of move to vapes, and then you're moving toward where, pouches are currently placed closer down to where nicotine gum is in terms of the likely continuum of risk. But as I mentioned before, they are new, and there's research, we don't know what happens if people use pouches for 20 years.
There's this other question of being on stimulants all the time, being on nicotine or even caffeine or whatever, but being on these things could have other effects on our health. It could have effects on our sleep. Dude, I tell you, dude, I think that this thing interferes with sleep. I totally do, at least for me.
Before the FDA's authorization, the company announced it was expanding its capacity for production as demand soared in the US. It expects to be able to produce around 900 million cans of Zyn for 2025. The company predicts that it will reach $3.5 billion in sales by 2030.
Zyn has been one of the big success stories in terms of its growth. You're looking at a product that's been growing 40% plus in the US market, and we look at the runway of growth being long. There's an opportunity for Philip Morris not only to further expand Zyn in the US market as they continue to take share, but also an international opportunity.